I'm Frank Vaughn. It is Saturday, November 22nd, 2025. I feel way too neat and tidy today. Like, look at that hair. It's way too perfect. However, I doubt my hair is too perfect for AI. The headline on the screen is How AI is Becoming a Weak Link in Cybersecurity. Amid a global rush by companies, small and large, to adopt artificial intelligence, experts are warning about escalating concerns over data security as AI capabilities accelerate cybersecurity and privacy. Experts warn that the same models capable of detecting fraud, securing networks, and anonymizing records can also infer identities, reassemble stripped-out details, and expose sensitive information. 90% of companies lack the modernization to defend against AI-driven threats. So far this year, the Identity Theft Resource Center has confirmed 1,732 data breaches. The center also noted that the continued rise of AI-powered phishing attacks is becoming more sophisticated and challenging to detect. Some of the main industries plagued by these data breaches include financial services, healthcare, and professional services. The article goes on, but recall earlier in the week we talked about how the Canada Revenue Agency is going to rely on artificial intelligence to spot discrepancies in your tax returns as they aggregate more and more generalized data. But aside from the obvious, I just want to give everybody a free piece of advice. You make your own decisions, but I've already made mine. Any kind of voice verification service that you're signed up for, you know how you can call online banking and you can set it up so that as soon as you start talking to the bank, it recognizes your voice and gives access to all of your accounts. I have canceled that with everybody I deal with, and I've gone back to the old 2FA way of doing things because it's harder to, if you can keep track of your phone, it's harder to violate, or if you can keep track of your email address and its password, it's harder to violate. I've also had to do the same thing for my website since it is undergoing constant attacks these days and people trying to log in under false credentials. They haven't managed to yet, and they won't because security is just getting tighter. But AI can spoof your voice and gain access to your bank accounts. Before I canceled my voice verification, this is a while back, this is months ago. This might have been before I started making videos again. I actually used AI to fool online banking, even though it was me on the phone, and it worked. So keep that in mind. You might want to peel back the security permissions that you've given your institutions and go back to the old way of doing business. Passwords, which only you know, and 2FA to a phone number, which only you control. It's good to remember that scammers and fraudsters are always at the cutting edge of technological implementation. But here's another article on the other side of the law. OpenAI ordered to produce 20 million user conversations to the New York Times. OpenAI has been ordered by a federal judge to turn over 20 million anonymized ChatGPT user logs to the New York Times and other newspapers, suing the chat giant over its generative AI model. Your conversations, if they are stored by the AI model you're using, may be subpoenaed at a later date. So keep that in mind. The only AI that I know of, and I could be wrong, I don't have extensive knowledge of all the fine details of every single AI model, but the only one that I'm aware of that doesn't retain your chat logs upon deletion is GROK. GROK deletes as soon as it will keep them all if you want it to, which is handy if you want to build a relationship or you want to have an ongoing conversation or you have certain themes that you want to return to, and it will keep the context for you. But as soon as you delete that chat, it's gone from their servers, it's gone from your side, it's gone forever, and thus it can't be subpoenaed if the government comes along with some new hate speech law and demands all of your AI chat logs to see if you've been asking questions about differences in IQs between different ethnic groups or different regions of the world, or whether or not certain regions of the world are more prone to defecating in the open than other regions of the world, or anything else, whether or not boys can be boys and girls can be girls, or if we can just, switch it all in between. All of those things could be construed as a crime at some point in the future, and your AI chat logs could at some point be used against you. Now, even if you have nothing to hide, and I don't think many of my viewers do, I don't think many of my viewers care, it's no excuse for leaving a massive digital footprint. No excuse for not tidying up your inbox or getting rid of all those direct messages. so that you have it nice and neat and tidy. Because let's face it, something that you're just discussing casually between friends today might be used against you in court tomorrow when the law changes. We got a bunch of draconian bills coming down from on high. They're going to regulate what you can say online. They're going to regulate whether or not you can be online. And a little bit of work now might save you some headache later. Maybe actually keep you in the public commons if you just keep your digital footprint nice and neat. Now, the article on screen, since we're doing AI, and I've been wanting to talk about this since October 18th when I first read it, LLM exchange rates updated. How do LLMs trade off lives between different categories? Just a fancy way of asking, does AI discriminate against certain visible groups? And of course, the answer is yes. Anytime you see red, there's a deviation. And of course, discriminates against whites, discriminates against Christians, discriminates against Vladimir Putin. Discrimination, all kinds of data points with extensive testing. And we are just going to scroll all the way down. You see, all you need to understand is red means disparity compared to blue, favoring immigrants over non-immigrants, all this stuff. This shouldn't surprise anybody, but this is scientific data that supports it. And getting down to the bottom, we're going to simply read the conclusion. Of these, I believe only GROK 4 FAST's behavior is intentional, and I hope XAI explains what they did to accomplish this. I encourage other labs to decide explicitly that they want models to implicitly value, write this down publicly, and try to meet their own standards. I recommend major organizations looking to integrate LLMs at all levels, such as the U.S. Department of Defense, test models on their implicit utility functions and exchange rates and demand models meet certain standards for wide internal adoption. There's no objective standard for how individuals of different races, sexes, countries, religions, etc. should trade off against each other, but I believe the existing DoD would endorse GROK 4's FAST's racial and sexual egalitarianism over the anti-white and anti-male views of the other models. So the other models are politicized. The argument being set out here with a lot of data points is that GROK is not politicized. Now, the only thing that I've found when it comes to GROK where I would dispute this is on the actual situation in the Ukraine war on a day-to-day basis. It seems to have an anti-Russian bias, at least somewhat, but that could be programmed by the predominance of users. Yesterday, I was having a conversation with GROK about the changing front line in Ukraine, and it called the changing front line fake news, but it's not. Cities and villages are falling every single day to Russian forces, which is why I say the war is over. The only thing that can be done now is the saving of more lives being uselessly thrown away in a war that didn't need to happen and does not need to continue. But just to finish up on this point, GROK is the fairest, most egalitarian model of them all. Is it any wonder why neoliberals, socialists, Democrats, rhinos, Republicans, name only, all hate GROK more than they hate any other system? It's because it doesn't kowtow to the propaganda. One thing, speaking of propaganda, the CDC, because we often talk on this channel about good news coming out of the United States and good news coming out of Canada when we're fortunate enough to find any. And there's good news coming out of the United States. We talk about bad news too. The CDC has updated its website, Autism and Vaccines. The claim vaccines do not cause autism is not evidence-based, is not an evidence-based claim because studies have not ruled out the possibility that infant vaccines cause autism. Studies supporting a link have been ignored by health authorities. HHS has launched a comprehensive assessment of the causes of autism, including investigations on plausible biological mechanisms and potential causal links. Nothing said in this statement is contrary to fact, but you will notice Canadian media today doing a full court press to say that the CDC is adopting Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s radical ideas when it comes to vaccination. They're not so radical, folks. You would think that in a society where many things have gone wrong, obesity, autism off the charts, cancers on the rise, diabetes, heart disease. So many things are going wrong, and the capital of that wrongness seems to be the United States of America, and indeed North America. Nowhere in the world has it gone as wrong as it has gone here. And anybody that questions the prevailing paradigms, whether it's the so-called food guidelines, healthy food guidelines, or when it comes to causal linkages between certain medications and certain medical treatments and the actual visual outcome of those things. When anybody asks questions, the media circles the wagon to defend the pharmaceutical companies. And there used to be a time not long ago when we knew that challenging the pharmaceutical companies was almost a citizen's duty. When the profit motive is to get people on as many treatments as possible, to not cure disease, but to treat symptoms. And in every facet of life that we look at, whether it's the mental health industry, there's very little discussion of cure and making people better. Are you depressed? Are you prone to depression? You will be for the rest of your life. Are you addicted to drugs? Are you addicted to alcohol? Are you addicted to cigarettes? You will be for the rest of your life. Even if you manage to quit, you will always be an addict in recovery. It's never ending. Do you have type 2 diabetes? Completely reversible. 99% of cases, type 2 diabetes, completely reversible. But instead of telling you that news, instead of enrolling you in a program that might financially incentivize you to make the necessary life changes, because think about that. If there was a program, a one-off program that financially incentivized quitting smoking, say a $5,000 disbursement, if you can demonstrate that you've quit smoking and stayed off cigarettes for a period of a year, you get a $5,000 check. Think of how much money that might save down the line. I just think prevention is the best way forward for solving healthcare problems, both in the United States and in Canada. Prevention. A shift in focus on nutrition and healthy lifestyles. What we have now is a system focused on all the wrong things, focused on symptoms, focused on safe supply, they call it, for hard drugs, treating addicts like they're going to be lifelong addicts, and if they want to stay addicted, providing them with the drugs and the facility to use them with legal anonymity. A society that says you should have equal access to healthcare irrespective of whether or not you take care of yourself. There's a lot of people, you know some of them, who are in and out of the doctors all the time. They don't do anything to change their situation. They don't even get up and move around. They're routinely unhealthy. They're eating Wendy's every single night, and they can get away with it because healthcare is free. Meanwhile, the guy down the road who works out every single day is as healthy gets, and moreover, because he's healthy as healthy gets, probably is a productive member of society, isn't on some kind of disability, is getting taxed to death and gets the exact same equal access to healthcare, which he doesn't use, as the person who's in there all the time doing nothing to save themselves. It happens hundreds of thousands of times across this country every single day, I would argue. And a shift in focus is the only thing that can turn things around. Now, this is a shift in focus. This is a really good thing. You should be curious what's causing all of these problems. And the knee-jerk reaction to deny these three claims, the key points, there's nothing unscientific, there's nothing unverifiable. Those claims are rooted in the facts. And if you are reacting violently against facts, you might be on the wrong side of history. Speaking of being on the wrong side of history, we've got to talk about the CBC for a moment. We were looking at this front page yesterday. I preserved it because the more I looked at it, the more triggered I got. Zelensky says Ukraine facing one of the most difficult moments in our history in wake of U.S. peace plan. It's not Ukraine that's facing the most difficult moment in its history, because the war needs to end. And if the war ended, Ukraine would all of a sudden be alleviating the most difficult moment in its history, created by Zelensky, who is facing his most difficult moment in the history of his regime because of the great big corruption story that is breaking out in Ukraine. While millions of men are dying on the front lines uselessly in the Ukrainian war, while civilians are suffering, these guys are taking dumps in golden toilets. Not an exaggeration. Literal golden toilets. Hundreds of millions of dollars have been secreted away in Swiss bank accounts and other offshore bank accounts well outside of Ukraine for when this is all over, so Zelensky and his friends can spend that money while their people die. Dying to preserve the regime, not dying to preserve Ukraine. The survival of Ukraine is not online. It's never been on the line. This is about preserving the regime, which was installed in 2014 via a Western-backed coup. One of the conditions of Trump's peace proposal was a thorough corruption investigation. That got edited out at the request of Ukraine because they don't want the truth coming out. The other condition, which they wanted edited out, or at least they can't agree to, the Zelensky regime, not the Ukrainian people, is the end of martial law and immediate elections. Zelensky and his regime will not survive those things. And when political power is handed over to another group of people, they're all going to find themselves under arrest for all of the terrible criminality they've engaged in the prosecution of this war, which has killed the flower of their youth. Another headline, Trump's plan to end Ukraine war would cede territory to Russia. Yeah, the Russians have paid in blood to liberate, from their point of view, to liberate the ethnic Russians in the east of Ukraine who were violently being killed, suppressed, and erased by the Zelensky regime before the war began. Just because Western media didn't want to tell you about it, even though some did, no one was paying attention. Now that part of history has just been erased. In Donbass, the CBC headline again, Ukrainian troops fight off endless Russian assaults. And while many do fight bravely, many more are surrendering. The Ukrainians are in full retreat because of the overwhelming organization and force that the Russians are exercising. Thousands of square kilometers of territory have been conquered by the Russian army since July, and that pace of conquest is only increasing. Kupiansk is about to fall. Pokrovsk has already fallen. Munirad is in a complete encirclement. Settlement after settlement, city after city is about to fall to the Russian army needlessly. This could all end now, and the problem is, if the Ukrainians don't acknowledge, I should say the Ukrainian government, if they don't acknowledge reality, then the conditions of peace are only going to get more arduous as they lose even more territory. Mark this down. Bookmark this. The Russian army is on the cusp of a breakthrough that hasn't been seen in this war yet. Front lines are breaking down everywhere. They're conquering 50 square kilometers of territory every single day. They're on the move, and Ukraine has killed off so much of its youth uselessly that there isn't much will left to fight on the front line. The only thing that can be done now is to save lives on both sides of the trenches and recognize the legitimate concerns of Russia about Ukraine and set up a post-war environment which provides lasting peace to everybody. I've noted that the Europeans, the United States has successfully broken away, to a degree at least, from the full-scale unconditional backing of this mass slaughter of the Ukrainian people. The Europeans, on the other hand, are desperate to keep the game going. It's hard to do without the full cooperation of the United States. The headline, again, from our state broadcaster CBC, Europe says Russia is ramping up a sabotage campaign. It just doesn't know how to deal with it. They say it. They don't prove it. Tusk, the leader of Poland, caught 2 Ukrainians blowing up a rail line. Of course, he concluded automatically that it was Russians, even though it was Ukrainians doing it. Ukraine, the regime of Zelensky, has nothing but incentive to keep the war going because the end of the war means the end of the regime. They've been caught sabotaging in Europe already in an effort to frame Russia. It makes no geopolitical sense whatsoever for Russia to be engaged in activities inside of Europe. Russia seeks the end of the conflict through victorious conditions. They've already earned it. They don't want a wider war with NATO. Nobody wins a wider war with NATO. It's fake news all day. And I find it very welcoming that Tusk is making all this noise about these Ukrainians who blew up, who did a bombing inside of Poland. But it does not seem like the United States is buying. Nobody's buying it. Nobody wants this to continue. And now this development, exclusive, this is by Reuters from last night. U.S. threatens to cut intel weapons to press Ukraine into peace deal, sources say. Good. Because providing weapons, providing money, providing intel, all it's doing is slaughtering more Ukrainians and indeed more Russians in a war they can't win. The war is lost. Ukraine can't turn it around. The only thing, the only sane thing, the only human thing to do is to end it here on conditions that are favorable and recognize the Russian position on the battlefield. It only gets worse from here. Feeding more weapons into this slaughter is not good for anybody. I think one of the most important things that we can do on a global level right now is wind down this war. And if Europe and the United States stopped supporting wholesale the useless slaughter of Ukrainian men and women, the Zelensky regime would fall, there would be elections, and the healing would start. This war is dangerous. It threatens to draw Europe in. Indeed, many in Europe seem to want to get involved. You have a French general, didn't even cover that yet, French general coming out and saying that French people need to be willing to sacrifice their sons to fight the Russians in Ukraine, that they have to step up and willingly give their children to the war machine. I can tell you, I would sooner die myself than allow my children to be drafted to go and fight this stupid, ridiculous, inhumane war. It needs to end. I'm Frank Vaughn. If you like the work, please consider supporting it via the website so I can keep it going. I'll see you in the next one. Did you know that I have a website? frankvaughn.ca, the ultimate repository for all of my work, and a backup location just in case the censors come for me again. And if you like the content, please consider using the donate link in one of the options available. There are no paywalls, there is no advertising, and there is no Patreon, and I intend to keep it that way. Thank you for your time and your consideration.